Hi everyone, welcome. My name is Billy. Today I would like to share with you how to sew the slit of a left cuff when the sleeve itself is lined. And this method eliminates the use of a bias binding to finish the slit. And I really love it. It's really easy. And so I will share with you, and hopefully that will be helpful in your construction of the garments. So what I did here, as you can see from the picture here, is basically I just sewed up the outside and also the lining separately. But I only sewed up about, for the underarm seam here for the sleeve, I only sewed about 1/3 of it, and so the rest of it is left open. And this 1/3 is just to allow me to be able to attach the sleeve to the bodice. And then I inserted the lining to the dress wrong sides together. So I just kind of inserted it in. And then similar to how I lined a dress with a zipper in the center bag that I talked about in my video 27, I basically folded the right side because originally when I first inserted the sleeves, the fabrics are wrong sides together, but to sew the slit, they need to be right sides together. So basically I just fold the exterior fabric inward and then the lining outward, and then I pin it, and then I pulled out the lining, and I just sew, how this is slit, and I just sew around the slit and then clip a bit of the edge to make sure that it would lay flat, and then I understitched the lining portion, as you can see from this picture here. And then once I did the stitching for the slit, then I sewed up the sleeves for the exterior fabric and the lining. So here I have the lining fabric underneath this exterior fashion fabric, and I also drew the line for the slit, where normally the pattern piece will have you cut the slit, but instead of cutting it, I simply just marked it with this heat erasable pin, and then I'm sewing it down to secure both layers of the fabric. Then I drew a bit of a sort of an arrow around the slit line that I just sewed. And so here, so I just drew a little pointed arrowhead, and then I would then draw two lines on either side of that slit line. And then I drew about 1/4 of an inch away from that slit line. And then so that would now serve as my guide as I sew around that slit line, just following the arrow, the pointed arrow that I just drew. And then here I am now cutting open the slit, and so I'm just cutting along the slit line that I earlier sewed, and so that's what I'm doing. So I sew very close to the line that I just sewn, but without cutting through the stitches. And then I also trim back a bit of the seam allowance to remove the excess bulk. And so now I turn it around to prepare for understitching. Understitching allows the lining to stay on the inside of the garment, and so it's really a step that you don't want to skip. So here I am just going down on the lining side, fairly close to the stitch line. And in hindsight, I probably should have switched to a different color because the thread I'm using, the color is much closer to the exterior fabric than the lining. But you know what, it's okay. And here I do not understitch all the way around that slit because somehow I noticed that if I do that, the slit doesn't sit very flat when I turn the garment right side out. And so what I do is, so here I am stitching on the other side. So what I do instead is just understitch and then went as far as I can before the fabrics get really kind of bunched up. You can feel it because just a lot more volume of the fabric at the tip of that slit. And so I just stop before that, and then that allows me to turn the slit right side out, you know, with pretty good results. And then a good ironing would ensure the entire thing is quite flat. And so now once I turn it around, this is what it looks like. So it looks pretty flat. Then the next step is to close up the underarm seam of the sleeves. And so this is the exterior fashion fabric. So I'm just preparing to close up the underarm seam of that sleeve. Because previously I only sewed about 1/3 of this sleeve just to allow me to attach the sleeve to the armhole, and now I'm just closing it down all the way to the cuff area. And I'm doing the same thing also, closing up the underarm seam for the lining. And so now I, turned everything right side out. And so I just kind of flatten it out a bit. And now I am preparing 2 layers of the fabric, the exterior fabric and the lining, to base them together to prepare for the next step for inserting the cuff. As you can see, the lining and the exterior fabric do not perfectly line up. So I'm just trimming back the lining, the rayon challis that somehow is stretched ever so slightly. So I am trimming this lining down. Now that I will just go ahead and baste together both layers of the fabric. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have enjoyed this video. Please do stay safe and be well, and I hope I will see you soon. Bye bye.